Hello and welcome to Inside Tennessee Football's practice facility. I'm Ryan Sylvia. This is Noah Taylor. We are with VolReport.com on the Rivals Network, and we were just able to talk with both coordinators for Tennessee football, offensive coordinator Joey Halzle and defense coordinator Tim Banks, along with pair of running backs Jabari Small and Jalen Wright, and defensive back Gabe Judy Lawley. So let's jump right into what they had to say. Let's start with you on the defensive end, Noah. What was the biggest takeaway from what Tim Banks said today?
Yeah, I think it's the kind of the talk of this week, and that's fundamentals and kind of getting back to the basics for this Tennessee defense. A lot of questions about, the emphasis on tackling, because it showed on Saturday, again, that, some plays that Florida made probably could have been prevented with just some better fundamentals. And one in particular, obviously, being the Trevor Etienne play, the touchdown that kind of blew it open for Florida there in the first quarter. And Tim Banks talked about the emphasis on that today and this week in general, and even Gabe Judy Lawley getting up there in the player segment, and also talking about the practice that they had today. That's something that they've really gone over this week. They've gone, and he says we do it all the time. It's not something that's just showed up this week that they've said tackling's important. It's been something that's going back to the spring that they've put an emphasis on, but especially this week, eye placement was something they used a lot today, a word they used a lot today as well. So just getting back to that, they'll have an opportunity Saturday to kind of right some of those wrongs before jumping back into SEC play against South Carolina in 2 weeks.
Yeah, Tim Banks talking about how tackling is always going to be of the utmost importance in practice. It doesn't matter if they made 100% of the tackles in the last game or if it was the game that looked like Saturday against Florida. Either way, it's going to be a focus, but definitely more of a priority right now, you would have to think, with the way that Saturday went. Let's swing it over to the offensive side with Joey Halzle, though. I thought it was interesting, his comments on Joe Milton, specifically asked about if it's on Joe Milton for these pre-snap procedure penalties, these false starts. And Halzle pretty much said it's not Joe Milton's responsibility to get his teammates ready in this offense. In some offenses, Milton's going to go to every single player, tell them the play call, they're going to huddle up, he's going to tell his linemen different things. In Tennessee, with the pace they want to go, it's not on Joe Milton to make sure everyone knows what's going on. They need to look to the sideline, get their signal, know what they have to do, get their cleats in the ground, and get ready to go. So the blame wasn't really put on Joe Milton in that aspect. It was put on kind of everyone else. Of course, Joe needs to be better in areas as well. I'm not saying he's flawless in the whole thing, but for pre-snap procedure penalties, it seemed like they were shifting the blame a little bit away from Joe and more as the team as a whole, which I thought was interesting. He also made some comments on Dante Thornton. Didn't see the field in the first half against Florida. He was asked what's led to him struggling to see the field so far after all the preseason hype. And he said that he's still kind of taking things as a freshman almost, in terms of learning what he needs to do to kind of gain the coach's trust. So it's a little bit of a process for Dante Thornton right now to be able to see the field. Of course, Squirrel White being that primary slot receiver, but he said they expect Dante to continue to grow and to really step into a bigger role as this season progresses. But let's talk about the players we had on the defensive end. Gabe Judy Lawley, what did you think about what he had to say?
Yeah, it was a big opportunity for him on Saturday. Guys been kind of coming off the bench in the first two games. Danico Slaughter being out, not playing against Florida, allowed him the opportunity to get more playing time in there, and I think made the most of it. Obviously, he talked about today it being a loss kind of takes away from some of that performance, but he felt like overall could improve, he said, but was impressed with the way that he played, and said it just really felt good. I think the word he used was knock the cobwebs out. He's a guy, played at Vanderbilt, he's played in this league before, and most recently at BYU, so he's played a lot of football. So for him to go out there in a tough road environment, at a position of need for Tennessee, a position where you need experience, that corner position, played pretty well, and I think something he could build off of. And then Ricky Gibson, a freshman, again, because of the Danico Slaughter situation, a guy that was able to get in there too. And Tim Banks, kind of hailed his performance, getting some of his first significant playing time on Saturday in a tough environment. So overall, a position, like we said, of need for Tennessee, where they need that experience, and he's put an emphasis on guys getting reps in that rotation, and they got some in a really tough environment on Saturday.
Tennessee's defense, an area that wants to rotate a lot, and that's what we saw. You mentioned Danico Slaughter not being available to play in that game. Well, that of course led to Ricky Gibson getting his chance, bumped up Gabe Judy Lawley into that starting spot. So shifted some things around, but it's something that they wanted to do anyway, kind of getting some younger players some reps as they'll need them going forward this season. As I mentioned, though, Jalen Wright, Jabari Small, the two backs for Tennessee that have come in and been really the main two guys. Dylan Sampson not seeing around the Florida game. Side note on that, Joey Halsey talked about how they have a lot of trust in him. They know he's capable and what he's capable of. Heupel on Monday talked about too. They didn't necessarily anticipate not giving him the ball at all, but they're still really excited for what he can do this season. They know that he's a great playmaker. Whether you give him the ball in a handoff or in a pass play, they know that he can do great things. So nothing to really worry about in the Dylan Sampson front from him not playing. It sounds like they have a lot of trust in him going forward still. But talking to Jabari Small and Jalen Wright, what stood out to me was Jalen Wright's comments on Joe Milton.
Yeah.
Milton obviously had a good game, but not the best game. As we mentioned earlier, a lot of things he can clean up. Still a lot of confidence coming from Milton, and both running backs talked about how the team is still very confident in Milton's ability and what he's going to be able to do this season for Tennessee. And they haven't seen a drop off in the term with swagger and confidence that Jalen Wright used about Joe Milton. And I want to reiterate, this team knows that they need to improve. Joe Milton knows that there's steps he needs to take this season. They're not sitting here saying everyone's perfect and we're going to be fine. But I think it is a good sign to hear from teammates of Joe Milton that they still have a lot of trust in him going forward and think that he could be a big impact for this team. And then also, Joey Halsey asked about, will this offense be better if Nico was at the helm? And very quickly shut that down, saying that this is Joe Milton. It's operational issues right now, and they think Joe Milton's operating at a great level. So Joe Milton needs to improve, needs to take that next step for Tennessee to get where they need to be. Disappointing game against Florida, but this coaching staff and these players seem to have a lot of confidence in what he can do. So it should be interesting to see exactly what Joe Milton does against UTSA, against South Carolina going forward. Is he able to take that next step to truly put Tennessee in a position to really compete for the SEC East, which at this point would take probably an undefeated SEC slate from here on out. So it'll be interesting to see. We'll keep tabs on it. We will be here back on Thursday to talk to Josh Heupel, get his final comments ahead of the home game against UTSA. And then, of course, we will be at the game covering everything there is going on in a really important bounce back game for Tennessee. So make sure you head over to VolReport.com for all of our written content and hop in the message board. There's been some great discussion about kind of what Tennessee needs to do going forward. And then, of course, subscribe to the YouTube channel to not miss any of the videos, whether it's the press conferences, whether it's these breakdowns of what they had to say, whether it's the VolReport show or the Checkerboard Chatter with Tyler Ivins. A lot of content on the YouTube channel you don't want to miss. Links to everything you will need is in the description. And thank you for watching.